Hi everyone, it's Todd Nauck, and I'm back with a new sketch video. This time I'm drawing Ultron from the movie Avengers Age of Ultron, which opens this weekend. So I thought this would be a perfect time to finally draw Ultron and give it a go. Now I'm drawing the movie version Ultron here, which is a very unique design and one I haven't drawn before, so I definitely needed a photo reference to make sure I got all the details right. This kind of coincides with a question that was asked on Instagram by Denix_11, who asks, when you draw a character, do you research the character you're drawing on the internet, or do you have it already in your mind? So for a character like movie version Ultron, no, I haven't drawn it before, so I don't know what it looks like. I definitely need that photo reference. So I did a Google image search, found a photo of an angle that was similar to what I wanted to draw, and I was able to look at it on my iPad while I drew this to make sure I got all the different bits and parts of his robot-y face all put in the correct place. So it's a bit of a challenge, and it's definitely a puzzle. You have to take your time, put each piece where it needs to be. So I started there with that kind of nose plate, moved into the eyes, then went into the jaw, that kind of upper cheekbone, I should say, then to the jaws, and he has those big circles around the jaw part of his face, and then putting in the little the top of his head details and the different seams that and tech that run through the course of his head. So it's a slow process of just adding each little bit and adjusting things where necessary, adding lines, erasing lines if necessary. So in the sketch stage here, I keep it pretty light and pretty loose so I can make changes a little more easily on the fly. So along with Dennis's question here, when it's a character that I've drawn a lot or have grown up, watching or reading in comics like Spider-Man or Batman, those characters I can draw straight from my brain. I don't need reference every time because I know all the details of how that character fits together. A lot of people ask, do I use reference when I draw, photo reference? And, sometimes I do. It depends on what I'm drawing. For buildings, backgrounds, cars, animals at times, I definitely want to get photo reference to make sure I'm maintaining accuracy. Sometimes photos from different angles. And if necessary, like for cars and animals, I'll buy plastic toys so I can look at it from whatever angle I need to draw it at. But for buildings, I'll use Google Maps and use the street view and go exactly to where I need to draw. I had to draw a place in Paris for an issue of Guarding the Globe for Robert Kirkman's Skybound comic Guarding the Globe, and I was able to go right to that place. I didn't have to look up photos of it. I could go right there through Google Street View and get a whole 360 view of the area, which was fantastic because whenever I changed angles for the characters, I could change that angle from the street view and see what would be behind that character. So I was able to keep my backgrounds correct and accurate depending on where the characters were in the scene and what would be behind them. So it made my work so much easier instead of trying to have to just imagine what it would be if I reversed the angle from one character to the next to make sure things looked fairly believable. Now I had a resource that took me right to the place in Paris, and I could do it from the comfort of my own home. So definitely using any sort of photo reference is really beneficial if you want to maintain that accuracy. I also like to use photo reference for when I'm drawing people as well when it's necessary. A lot of it comes from my imagination. I can see the pose, I can turn the person around in my head and draw them on the paper. But sometimes I do have those challenging poses or facial angles that I need photo reference for, so I'm going to look that up. I like to look at martial arts or gymnastics, seeing if I need to draw a certain kind of fighting pose or jump, and see how does it look in real life, and then how do I exaggerate that for the excitement of comics. So using photo reference for people is great as well, especially when his face is at certain angles, like if it's an upshot and the person's looking upwards. That's a very really challenging angle to draw from, or if they're looking down, if it's not kind of a straight on shot or 3/4, like a normal face shot, and I want to get a really interesting angle, then I like to refer to photos to make sure that I'm getting all those facial features angled in the right way so it is believable. So definitely use photo reference whenever necessary to make sure you're getting the accuracy that you want, and then you put your own comic book flavor on top of that. So here we are about halfway through the inking stage, and it's just been a matter of picking out those final lines from the sketch stage that I want to convey the different angles and shapes and plates of Ultron's face. One thing I want to make sure is that each angle and plate lined up correctly with its neighboring angle and plate so that it all fits together to make Ultron believable and look as close to the actual movie Ultron as possible. Varying my line weights to a degree, slightly thicker lines for the main sections, the main shapes, and then the little thinner detail lines to give a little extra detail for the eye to play with. And those thicker lines, again, next to the thinner lines, give the viewer's eye more to play with and makes it clear what they're supposed to look at and perceive when they look at the face. So if they were all thick lines, it would be very cluttered and I think a little too cluttered for the amount of detail that I've put into this illustration. I think if they were all thin lines, I think that'd be all right, but I think the thicker lines give it a little more pop, a little more energy. That's just my approach to inking, my personal style that I've developed. Your style may vary, and that's totally cool. If you can make it work, go for it. Nothing wrong with that at all. So let's tackle another question here from Art of Todd Nauck Facebook page. Robert Robertson asks, is there a series or a character that you want to work on and you haven't had the opportunity to do so? Also, is there a series you want to revisit that you have worked on in the past? Let's see, a book that I haven't gotten to do yet, I'd say over at DC Comics, something Booster Gold related, like a Booster Gold solo series or a Justice League International series. I loved the Justice League International that starred Booster Gold, Blue Beetle, Martian Manhunter, Fire Eye, Sky Gardener. So getting to do a book like that I think would be a lot of fun, a whole lot of fun. And then over at Marvel, a book that I haven't gotten to do, I would probably say Fantastic Four. I've gotten to do stories that feature the Thing in a Spider-Man Thing team-up, and I did a Thing story for Deadpool 250, the Death of Deadpool issue. But I haven't gotten to do a story that features Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, Human Torch, so getting to do a Fantastic Four book I think would be a lot of fun, because I've been a fan of Fantastic Four since I was a little kid. As for a book I'd like to revisit, at DC Comics, easy answer right there, Young Justice. I love doing Young Justice. I did almost every issue of our 55-issue run of that series, and I'd love to revisit those kids and tell some new stories, especially if I got a chance to work with Peter David again writing. I had so much fun working with Peter David on that series, as well as working with my inker Larry Stucker and my editor Eddie Berganza. It was just a really, really great 5 years doing that series, so that's definitely one book I'd like to revisit. And of course, over at Marvel, I'd love to do more X-Men stuff. I love doing the Nightcrawler series. We got to feature a lot of the different X-Men in that series. So getting to draw more X-Men in general, of course, would be high on my list because I've been a huge X-Men fan. All right, and let's see. What I'm doing here is something new, definitely new to my video channel, and also something new that I'm doing in art in general is a sketch wash. I've seen a lot of my friends do this, so it looks really cool. It can have a really cool effect, so I wanted to give it a try. And I thought this would work really well since most of Ultron is gray. I thought a sketch wash would work really well. It's a great way to do a grayscale illustration. What I do here basically is I take this softer lead, the sketch wash pencil, and I shade in all the areas that I want there to be gray. I'm leaving different parts open, like there towards the back of his head for a light source, as well as in different parts on the interior of his face as well. Some for highlights, some that's where the wash part will come in. So I'm filling in a lot of this with different shades of gray, different dark and light areas. So I'm bearing down and putting heavier gray areas where I want there to be a darker gray, and then different areas that have a bit of a lighter gray. So it's keeping in mind my light source for the most part, and then just filling it in, shading it in to how dark or light I want that gray to be. But mind you, this is not the finished stage. This is just part one of the sketch wash stage. This is just getting in the graphite to where I want it to be. Part two will be coming up here really soon, where I'm going to take a water brush pen and schmooze all that graphite around with water, and it's going to create kind of this watercolor grayscale effect. So that's coming up here pretty soon. Let's see, so it's just keeping in mind my light source, I just drop in those shadows where I want them and just kind of playing around with it. It's nothing too exact. I'm just kind of letting it be a bit freeform here, but keeping in mind lighting and shadow accuracy as best I can. So now I'm coming in here with the water brush pen. And this is a pen that is filled up with water. And as I squeeze the pen, the water will come through a reservoir into the brush tip. And so from there, I can just paint all over the gray area of the sketches, the sketch pencil that I've placed down, and move that graphite around. I can leave it dark in certain places, and then I can spread it into that white area to create a gradation effect. So the more I move it around, the more watercolory it starts to look. And so I just want to hit every area that I sketched pencil in there to get that wash going, to get that wash working. Now, I'm using a thicker type of board here, so I can use some decent amount of water, but I try not to oversaturate it with water. I'm using a comic book backing board. It's acid-free, so it's really nice in that regard. It's a lot of fun to draw on, works well like a Bristol board. So it's nice and thick, so it's not going to buckle too much from the water, but I try to be careful with how much water I'm applying. But one thing that is great about doing something like this, or a watercolor, is that it challenges me to let the water be where it is, to dry as it is, to create the effect that it will create. It's an exercise to not overwork the art. The more I try to overwork it, the less natural it will be, and I'll lose all those cool effects that watercolor can bring. So it's a great way to challenge myself in that way, to just let the art be what it is, not overthink it, and see what forms and how cool that can look just by the nature of the water drying with the graphite. It's a really, really fun technique, and I think it works really well here on a piece like Ultron. Now for some extra added fun here, I've taken a red Sharpie to add all the red elements. I think it would just give the character a little more pop. It would kind of really stand out against the gritty gray metal, put the red energy in. So I'm just using a Sharpie here to convey that, doing that in his eyes and on his forehead stripes. And then for the little tinier seams where the energy is crackling underneath his robot casing, I'm going to use a red Pigma Micron marker, and for those finer lines, so that they don't overpower, and you get those nice thin lines as well. So it's just a little something just to give it a little extra pop. Something to keep in mind, if you're doing a sketch wash illustration and you want to do some of these color accents, make sure that the piece is completely dry. Make sure all that water has dried, otherwise the Sharpie will tear your paper. Now I'm coming in with the white gel pen to do some of the eye detail, just to really give the character some life and personality, and you get the kind of scariness of Ultron to a whole nother level there. Now I made sure that white gel pen was completely dry before I come in with my triangle here to draw in the background. Otherwise that orange triangle would be smearing that white all over the place and totally jack up my drawing. So make sure if you're using a gel pen, that gel pen is completely dry before you put any sort of tool, template, or your hand over it. If you're going to draw something else, make sure it is completely dry, because that white gel pen can smear, and you don't want to jack up your drawing in that way. And now it's just putting in a background here to give Ultron just a little more pop, just something to offset Ultron here. So it's a nice black shape. Rectangle behind him is just a simple graphic element to give it a little something extra. So finishing off this black section here, and what I like to do, and I've done it in a number of my illustrations, is when I do this graphic shape, I like to break it up with some white gel pen. I'll just come in here and do some cuts, some really quick cuts. Try not to overthink it, let it be kind of free and loose. It just gives the eye a little bit more to play with. Do a little fade here towards the bottom to really break it up, and there we go. And I want to say thanks for tuning in, thanks for subscribing, thanks for hanging out with me, and I hope you're following me on my social networks listed below. And something I had realized is as I zoomed in on my photo reference, I realized I had missed some details here on the faceplate of Ultron, so I wanted to make sure I came in here and added those little seams and tech as well, to finish them off. So like I said, thanks for subscribing, and please do feel free to follow me on my social networks. I hope you get a chance to go see Avengers Age of Ultron. I hope to see it this weekend myself, as well as Free Comic Book Day is this weekend, so be sure to hit a shop and get your free comics. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again real soon.